Alright, so it's been a while since I did one of these, but today we're actually going to be seeing if Titanosaurus, one of the best Showa monsters, can solo the Monsterverse. Y'all know the rules, so let's begin. Starting off with my GOAT, Titanosaurus. Y'all already know we do double scaling on here when it comes to these characters. Now, to start off with Titanosaurus, he obviously scales to Godzilla. And believe it or not, was one of the few that was actually pretty much boxing Big G up. Even grabbed this man by his nose with his teeth. I know Godzilla was pissed and straight up flung him around like a rag doll. So not only would he scale to Godzilla, who scales to Ghidorah, who also scales to the Gargoyle nukes, which are able to one-tap gas giants like Jupiter, which is a large star-level feat, by the way. Titanosaurus also has the statement of him being able to beat Godzilla underwater. And keep in mind, in most of the time of his appearances, he's usually mind-controlled by somebody. And without it, well, yeah, he's absolutely still a threat regardless. And believe it or not, this man is actually like super athletic. Bro can literally jump up all the way in the air and straight up smack jets. Then we have the fact that easily keep him up with Godzilla and the rest of the Showa Kaiju would put him at FTL to immeasurable levels of speed because again, Godzilla universes are all infinite in size. And then we have carried monsters like Gargan, Megalon, and Ghidorah who have been able to cross those distances. However, for his higher ends, this guy is easily universal, easily 4D. And then you have the fact that he was scaled to this because of Godzilla. Him being able to fight the Dora Beast, or Godzilla being able to fight with relative to Zone Fighter. Zone Fighter being able to fight the Dora Beast, who easily creates fourth dimensional constructs. So that's going to do it for Titanosaurus, with his lower ends being large star level due to the Garuga nuke scaling, and then higher ends being universal due to the Dora Beast scaling. So let's move on and actually talk about the Monsterverse. So the Monsterverse scaling is actually very interesting. You see, we have the various creatures of it, but again, not everyone scales that high. So today we're going to be talking about this. They all scale to Godzilla to a certain degree, right? So Godzilla himself would scale to the Hollow Earth. As his energy signature matches it, he's been able to punch a hole right through it. And so what we have here is that the Hollow Earth is known to have gamma radiation, or at least any form of radiation, at a cosmic level. More than the MCU Hulk could ever manage to hold. Who said that? But anywho, these have been compared to pulsars and black holes especially. And yet, the kaiju easily use this to cross into the Hollow Earth, including kaiju like Kong. Again, this is because Kong does get some disrespect somehow, but it is what it is. But unfortunately, there are two ways of looking at this. Number one, because of their biology allows them to bypass this only gets to Dora star level. However, at the higher ends of this, basically the highest highball, you have solar system. Because again, ignoring the biological factors that come with the kaiju, you are basically stating that these kaiju can honestly just tank the Hollow Earth inversion, which does have, the gravitational inversion of a black hole, meaning the crushing force as well. And then also the properties, or the more energy-like properties of it. So, ignoring that, you would have kaiju that are able to go through this like a hot knife through butter, meaning that they're tanking it on a constant basis. So, what we actually have for the Monsterverse is basically standard scaling, Dora star level, and then we have solar system. But let's actually talk about the Gauntlet, right? Instead of going through every kaiju in the Monsters, we're going to go through about 8, excuse me. So Scar King, Tiamat, Camazotz, Mechagodzilla, Beast, Glove, and Axe Kong, Ghidorah, Godzilla Evolved, and Shimo all would be the ones that Titanosaurus will have to run through in order to complete this challenge. Alright, starting off with the weakest on this list, we obviously got Scar King himself. So, Scar King would somewhat scale to Kong, and this is because he was able to use his speed and agility and was actually able to choke him out for a little bit, obviously, giving him some of that diddle treatment right there. And then obviously he was able to somewhat take attacks from Kong, albeit he was losing teeth left and right. And dude was getting punched like Jesus Christ. But overall, he's not beating Titanosaurus at all. I mean, obviously fighting against a stronger Godzilla, withstanding stronger attacks, and with all that speed and agility, all Titanosaurus is going to do is probably pull the same thing Godzilla did, which is catch the whip in its mouth, probably bring Scar King over, and punch him with his fist going through his chest. Titanosaurus moves on, and now let's go on to that round 2. Camazotz is up next, and well, he doesn't bring anything too much to the table either. The best he really has is his Sonic Screech and the way he was able to perform against Kong. Now, he was actually able to perform against Kong because this was a more, I would probably say, not the best condition Kong. I mean, this Kong was basically losing all of Skull Island, and his environment was pretty poor. So, I wouldn't say he was in the best conditions, but he was still at a pretty peak accurate form. Now, Camazotz being able to fight against this Kong, being able to take attacks from him and stuff like that, and being able to use his Sonic Screech to disorientate Kong, and even burst, I think, a water canister as well, which also helps here. Now, this is actually going to be a pretty funny fight, because imagine Camazotz watching Titanosaurus just jump up, snatch it out the air, and just probably hit that man with like an RKO, like mid-air and stuff like that. So it's actually going to be pretty hilarious. Then I actually think one of the few things Titanosaurus can do with its whole abilities and stuff is use its hurricane winds to actually knock over Camazotz. Keep in mind, again, even if you want to say he's a smaller sized character, this is still an attack from a much more stronger, more durable, and much more powerful character overall. So using his hurricane winds, I could actually see him knocking Titanosaurus out of the air and just straight up causing this dude to, well, fall. And if we say this takes place in the same climate as Skull Island, then it's very possible he might have stronger wind currents due to the conditions of the island blowing massive gust storms that were knocking over trees and even destabilizing environments. But Titanosaurus moves on, but now let's go to round 3. Next one off, we have T-Man. I know her placement is a little bit different than what I originally gave it, but I actually really had to retake a look at her, and I'm like, nah, she would definitely be above the other two. Now, this is because of her hydrokinesis and the fact that she did get stronger over the course of the Monsterverse, while Scar King and Camazotz were basically very, stagnant, if you guys get what I mean. Now, Tiamat does bring her hydrokinesis, her acid breath, and then her razor sharp scales on her body, which are able to cut up Godzilla and even a supercharged Godzilla. Now, this is actually going to be pretty interesting, because this takes place under the water. Yeah. And Titanosaurus has the statement of being able to beat his Godzilla under the water. And keep in mind, he would also scale to other monsters like Varan, who in the Showa, I believe, novelization and stuff like that, where every monster was basically jumping Ghidorah, and Ghidorah was just, he was putting in that work. But again, at the end of the day, bro was getting, straight up jumped, and it was hood treatment on that Monster Island. But when he actually went toe-to-toe with Ghidorah, he not only fought him one-on-one in the air, but actually slammed him on the ground so hard that he broke Ghidorah's wing, thus allowing the rest of this to pretty much happen. And with that being said, with Titanosaurus obviously scaling to him, and then you also have the fact that Titanosaurus is capable of beating Godzilla under the water, I'm more than likely going to say he could easily overpower a lot of Tiamat's stuff, manhandle, and probably just rip her in half, in all honesty. But Titanosaurus would easily beat this round 3, and unfortunately Tiamat or Lahamu is definitely going to be an orphan child. But now on to round 4. Mechagodzilla is definitely in the weirdest place here, because again, one moment he's, you could actually say he's a pretty strong monster, but that's without looking at the context, where he's fighting a tired and exhausted Godzilla who's basically running on like fumes at this point. And then we have the weaponry comparison between Showa and the Monsterverse. Now, while you might say, oh, well, the Monsterverse is definitely more advanced when it comes to, technology, I gotta argue against that. You see, in the Showa era, they have nukes. Gargantua's nukes, right? Like I said earlier, these guys could blow up entire gas giants and one-shot them pretty easily. You see, while the Hollow Earth comparison is pretty great with Godzilla being able to, use his atomic breath and obviously use the same force here, with Mechagodzilla having statements of being able to overpower that, that's not really impressive when it comes to technology. Again, it looks impressive because, again, the more advanced CGI, but really comparing the two weapons without the whole CGI comparison, obviously, the more advanced comparison, yeah, Titanosaurus has a much better technologically advanced verse, because again, what nuke do y'all know is destroying a whole planet? I mean, we don't even have nukes that could blow up our gas giant Jupiter, and the Monsterverse hasn't even shown that capability when it comes to technology. The best they have is like the Heave, which can go through the hollow earth because of the gravitational inverse and stuff like that. And then the Beast Glove, which is actually, pretty impressive, which is built off of Mechagodzilla himself. But again, it's more advanced than Mechagodzilla. But at the end of the day here, Titanosaurus would actually get, would one-shot Mechagodzilla. He's weaker than a full-power Godzilla. Even Adam Wingard stated that, yeah, the entire fight would have gone differently if Godzilla was, like, at full strength and stuff like that. And it's very obvious he would be above Monsterverse Godzilla. So, let's just move on to round 5, okay? Next off, we have Godzilla Evolved against Titanosaurus. Well, maybe I'll make this one a little bit more briefer than the rest of them. But in all honesty, it's really just comparing Showa to Monsterverse in terms of showings. And again, Monsterverse looks more impressive. Now, why am I saying looks more impressive? Because it's more updated. It's more, I guess you could say, graphic and stuff like that. But, more up to date in terms of the graphics of the franchise or in terms of the Godzilla franchise and stuff like that. But that doesn't really matter when the feats actually do show that Showa Godzilla is way more impressive. Like, this man, again, harming monsters that casually scale to the Gargantua nukes, or scale above the Gargantua nukes, excuse me. And then you also have the fact that while Godzilla Evolved is definitely, stronger and more durable than what he was before, I don't think it really matters at the end of the day. I mean, you still have characters that can beat him in that state. And from the Showa era, that would honestly be every other monster, like Manda, Varan, Anguirus, stuff like that. And then if it gets into the water, it's pretty much over. Titanosaurus is just taking that dub quite casually. But overall, Godzilla's best way to possibly win this in the lower end state is to actually try and keep it at long range for as long as he can. However, that's probably going to be hard if Titanosaurus is faster than him. But at the end of the day, Titanosaurus is fighting stronger, much more durable, and much faster monsters. So he is definitely taking out Godzilla Evolved. But now let's move on to the finale. And last but not least, we got Ice Mommy herself, Shimo. The Ice Queen herself, Shimo. So how does this honestly go? Well, believe it or not, I'm gonna have to say it like this. If Titanosaurus is able to close the range, he has it. The match is probably over at that point. But then we also have to go over the fact that Shimo herself is a walking ice nuke, okay? Capable of freezing even Godzilla, someone who has all forms of heat radiation on him. And yet, still, it took a distracted Shimo for him to actually go. Because again, if Mothra ain't bail him out, I guarantee you it would have taken him longer to really get out of that ice if it wasn't for that. However, Shimo still being able to clash with Godzilla, overpower him physically, and even throw him to such a degree that it took him quite a while to really recover from. He was like, oh, hold on a minute. And even then, Shimo was also able to take attacks from Kong in the novelization, where Kong was able to push through her ice breath and just started landing punch after punch after punch on her. So Yeah, no, it gets pretty interesting at this point here. But if Kong could just push through it, and we know Titanosaurus is stronger than him, I don't really see a reason why he can't do it. So this means Titanosaurus would actually be able to clear the Monsterverse. Huh. Well, I mean, it's not entirely unexpected. He is a Showa character with great Showa scaling and relative Showa scaling, mind you. Because again, even if a character is from the verse, it still has to have, feats and stuff like that to make it worth everything. And the fact that he was not only capable of matching his Godzilla, but capable and confirmed to be able to beat him underwater, plus the fact that he can use his hurricane winds to discourse a lot of the monsters, including the likes of Cambazods. And even if I added Rodan here, unfortunately I didn't, because again, he's apparently not that strong. But again, he may be, and I may just have to relook at it. But at the end of the day, does Titanosaurus clear the Monsterverse? Yes. But you guys know what to do, and I'll see you guys later.